So we are recording. And then if you can, there is a file that should be shared with you when you're not viewing my screen. It just gives a little bit, it gives basically the same information that's in the PowerPoint, except it's in a handout form. If you can download that from WebEx, that is okay. We will have it on our website for download later this week. Just having some technical issues in perhaps some people downloading it. So you go ahead and want to try that. You definitely can. It's file transfer, and then the file name should pop up. But if that doesn't work for you, don't worry, because we will have it for download in a few days. And then feel free to share all that information with your friends, your family, strangers on the street, just everyone you know, everyone you don't know. It's good information. Yeah. So we will get started. It is exactly 10 o'clock. My name is Rebecca Pearl, and I am the Financial Literacy Program Specialist for AARP ElderWatch. Thank you so much for joining us today on this crisp fall Monday morning. This is an interactive webinar. We're going to be chatting about talking to your loved ones about finances today. So when I say family, that includes family, friends, other domestic partners, really anyone that you love, how to talk to them about your finances. Just a little brief overview about AARP ElderWatch. AARP ElderWatch is a 19-year partnership with the Colorado Attorney General's office, working to fight financial exploitation of older adults, older Coloradans, through education and outreach, data collection, and by providing resources about scam prevention and financial security. AARP ElderWatch also has a volunteer staff helpline where you can report scams, financial exploitation, or receive peer-to-peer financial counseling. Dial 1-800-222-4444, option number 2, to be connected to a trained volunteer. And just a few reminders today about this webinar. Please mute your phone line until the end. You actually should have already been muted when you came in, but if you're not, you can just hit that microphone looking button. There should be a slash through it. That means you're muted, and that will make sure that we don't have any interruptions for the next half hour. Type questions into the chat. This is interactive. We will answer all of your questions at the end and are looking forward to as many questions as possible because learning from each other is great. And then this presentation is being recorded currently and will be posted to YouTube, which you can find at youtube.com/user/AARP Colorado. You can also log on there and find other presentations that have previously happened, and then if you miss our presentations that are upcoming, you can go back and watch those as well. We do have quite a few presentations coming up for the next, 6 weeks until the end of 2020, 8 weeks. So please feel free to tune in for them. We're going to have tons of great information on all different types of frauds and scams and financial literacy tips. Share that information with your friends and family, and we can all just learn a lot from all these presentations. It will be great. And now to the topic at hand. Talking finances with your loved ones. So first off, let's just talk about why people hate to talk about money. So here's a little fun fact. Most Americans would prefer to talk about marriage issues, mental health, addiction, race, and politics rather than about money. So literally any taboo topic that we think of, people are more likely to talk about it than money. And just breaking down the numbers here, 34% of couples who live together could not identify how much money their partner makes. 17% of parents with an income above $100,000 a year did not tell or plan to tell their children their net worth. Oh, sorry. 17% of parents with an income above $100,000 a year did tell or plan to tell their children their net worth. So that leaves a large number of the population that's making over $100,000 a year not keeping their net worth a secret from their child. And we will get into why that's problematic in a few minutes. 73% of adult children have not talked to their parents about their finances. And then again, people are more comfortable talking about literally anything else other than money. So why? Why do people hate to talk about money? You would think that it just kind of comes up in conversations, and it definitely does. But when the topic specifically, how much do you make? How much have you saved? Those specific topics come up, people freeze up and do not want to talk about it, which makes sense because there are several money taboos that are each tailored to different social contexts. So, you will walk into different social spaces across this country, and people will have different feelings about money. Higher income circles, people don't want to confront their own wealth because they don't want to think about how society is unequal, right? So they're kind of sparing themselves and not talking about their money because a lot of times it just makes them uncomfortable because of the inequality of our society. Middle-class households don't want to talk about money because silence basically says we are independent and we don't have to rely on any sort of government support or assistance from any organization. And that might not always be true, but most people that view themselves as middle class just will not talk about money and will not disclose that because it kind of solidifies this air of independence that you have when you, are in that middle class block. And then low income communities, in a lot of low income communities, you'll find people talking openly about money. So how hard it is to support a family on minimum wage work and then how to make a budget stretch. Again, these are not defined black and white categories. The social taboos, the money taboos can definitely change just based on who you're with. And these are not, that's kind of categorize people specifically based on their class. But this is just what a lot of times you'll find in these different communities. People also have, moral issues when talking about money. You don't want value placed on yourself based on your employment. And putting a price tag on that kind of puts your labor, gives it some value. And so talking about that with other people and comparing it can cause hesitation. Because you don't want to say, my employer values me more than yours does, or vice versa. But despite all of that, despite all of the things that people dislike about talking about money, it really naturally comes up in conversation based on where we live, where we've been educated, where we've traveled. Kind of get a gist of how much money people have or around how much money people have based on what they taught, where they say they're from, or where they went to school, and then where they've traveled, as well as a variety of other different factors. So you might be like, that's all great. I get that people hate to talk about money, and that did not encourage me to want to talk more about money, but it's really harmful when we don't have an upfront conversation with people that we know to discuss money. Because, number one, there's no practical system for teaching us about money and personal finance. A lot of times, people just go out into the world and kind of have to figure it out for themselves. And so when we are not talking about money, we can't learn from each other the way we can when we're discussing other things. People might also be more hesitant to ask questions about money or even discuss it because poor money skills are looked at as something to be ashamed of, right? You don't know how to manage your money? Well, that's a little embarrassing, which I disagree. It's not embarrassing at all, especially when point number one is we don't have a, practical system that's set up in place to teach us about personal finance. A lot of the information that you have to find is through books or online, especially because we don't talk about it. If you don't pay attention to finances, there are people waiting to take advantage of that. Personally, in the ElderWatch office, we see all the time about how people are taking advantage of other people not necessarily paying attention to finances, or just not quite having a full understanding about how the financial system works. And a lot of times those could be avoided by, talking to a neighbor. You got that text about economic impact checks going on again? Well, so did I. Maybe we should look into this. Oh, it's fake? Well, then, the two of us have worked that out together. And we've been paying attention, and now we have mitigated one of the harms of not talking about money, right? This also allows for inequality to go unchecked. So we live in a very unequal society, especially when it comes to money. The wealth gap in the United States continues to increase, and we continue to see that, especially with the effects of COVID-19. And when we don't talk about it, it kind of allows it to just keep brewing, keep happening, where people make a lot more money at the top, and people at the bottom don't make that much money. And we just kind of continue to live in that way of doing things until something changes, until someone speaks up about it and says, hey, maybe this isn't as fair as we originally thought. And then when loved ones pass away, it can cause a lot of confusion and heightened stress if their financial situation is not understood or explained before their passing, especially if it's not organized. And we've talked in the past about finances before the loss of a loved one. And a lot of times people just have really disorganized finances, pass away, and then leave their loved ones to sort through their, financial mess, right? And it causes a lot of stress, and it can be very confusing, and a lot of times money is lost to those processes. And then the last point is that finances are an issue in many relationships and are cited as a leading cause of divorce, yet most people just don't talk about them ever, even if they're having, and especially if they're having issues with their partner and finances, just because it's kind of scary topic to talk about. And so now we're going to have the talk about how to have the money talk with your partner and friends. And as we all know, money can be a touchy subject. The numbers say so. We can go back to the slide if you'd like, look at the numbers again. We know that this is a touchy subject. So before you have this conversation with your partner or with friends, just be sure to establish some ground rules. If there's a really, really touchy subject, right, there's certain subjects that people do not want to talk about. They don't want to talk about them right off the bat, but they might be eased into talking about them later. Establish those ground rules. Say, okay, this topic is currently off the books. We cannot bring this up, but in the next conversation we have, maybe it's something that we start to learn. Start small, right? Finances can be super duper daunting. Maybe start with, how much money do you earn every single year? How much money do you have saved up for retirement? What do your assets look like? And keep it as judgment-free as possible, right? We talk about judgment-free zones, but really when having this conversation, you want everyone to make sure that they feel included and welcome, and not that they're going to be shunned based on poor money decisions they've made in the past, or financial mistakes that they've made in the past, or about having poor money habits, right? We talk about poor money habits, but that can be really anything from not spending money on things that may be deemed important to spending too much money on things that may not be deemed important. So just trying to keep everything as judgment-free as possible, easing into the subject, but also saying, okay, we're going to have this conversation about money. Here are the rules that we need to establish. And then how can we make this the most welcoming as possible? be open about the financial mistakes you made. It might be kind of difficult to be open about financial mistakes, especially if they were, if you think that they were severe, but be open about them because other people can learn from your experiences. And also, don't hesitate to ask any sort of questions that you have. A lot of times when you ask a question in a group setting, other people have the same question. And so being able to answer that question helps us to all learn from one another. And don't forget to cite the decisions that you're proud of. That might help people figure out exactly what they can do with their money and how to be successful as well. So just an easy starting point as an example can be, what do your spending habits look like? How much money do you spend a week and what do you spend the month, right? Start off just simple and easy with a question like that. Kind of keep it open-ended so the conversation can flow, and then continue on with more in-depth topics. So, and I just wanted to clarify. So I have how to have the money talk with your family and partner, and then how to have the money talk with your parents. And then the last part is how to have the money talk with your adult children, because we have a variety of different audiences that we talk to at AARP, and I think that everyone can learn a little bit from all of the different sections. And this may be something that you broach in the future, and just having these tips in the back of your mind for any situation is important. So I decided to not limit it to just one audience, but kind of do a broad overview of all of them. So we have, you know, a pretty robust understanding about how to have these conversations in different settings. So the money talk with your parents is clearly going to be notably different than the one with your friends or partner, because many adult children do not want to have the money talk with their parents because they think it's not their business. And I totally feel that. As an adult child, I really shy away from talking to my parents about their financial situation because I feel like it's not my business. However, having this discussion sooner rather than later can help prevent stress and emotional hardship later on. So one thing my parents and I do is about once every 3 months, we sit down and we have a conversation where they give me just a little update about their assets, about their retirement savings accounts, and then about how much debt they have, if they have debt. And also my mom has a business, so she gives me a little bit of an update about how the business is going. And it allows us to, you know, kind of establish this relationship for later on when we have to sit down and talk about the bigger aspects of finances, kind of sets the stage for that. But parents might not want to have this conversation with you. Don't give up if they resist the first time, because I mean, don't pester them, right? Don't be like, Mom, Dad, you have to talk about your finances with me right now. And like call them every week and be like, okay, we have to talk about your finances now. That's probably not going to get them to do them, but ease them into wanting to have that conversation. And look for a natural way to bring up this topic after a big birthday, a family member or a friend making changes to their will, something like that. If you have siblings, see what level of involvement they want in the conversation. Do not exclude your siblings from this because it could cause family drama later. Find out if your siblings, do they want to be there? Do they want to play any role in managing your parents' finances if they unfortunately no longer can manage their own? Get these questions answered sooner rather than later to try to have less family drama in the future. Do not, and I repeat, do not have this conversation in a public setting. It can get tense. It is about money. It's not, you know, a light subject to bring up. Have it where you and your parents feel comfortable and where there will be few interruptions. So you don't want to be at like a public restaurant having, you know, a meal and a waiter keeps asking how your food is or if you want anything else and, you know, interrupting the conversation. You want this conversation to flow, not really have any sort of set end time, and be sure to talk in a respectful tone. Avoid ultimatums. So don't do that thing that people do where they're like, Mom, Dad, if you don't tell me about your finances, I'm never, ever going to take care of you in the future. Because that is not going to set the stage for an open and honest conversation. And you want to show them that you're not just in it for the money. It's all about how you want to care for them in the best way possible as they age. So once you have set the stage for this conversation, ask your parents if they have estate planning documents like advance directives, power of attorneys, and wills. And then if they don't have these documents, assist them in getting those done, either through an attorney or online. At the end, I'll give a few resources for finding those online documents. Find out how they pay the bills. And this might not be all in the same conversation, right? This might be over time. So maybe you start with finding out how they pay the bills. Oh, you pay the bills by check? Okay, well, would you consider me setting up automatic payment for you? Just in case something happens, then we make sure your bills are continuing to get paid. Find out what insurance policies they have, what their source of income is, and what their debts look like. And then ask them to write down this information as well as any sort of online account information that you would need to get in to access this information, and passwords in case of an emergency. And then make sure to keep all of that in a safe place because scammers are trying to steal that information. So just pivoting a little bit, and I see we have some questions. I will get to those at the end. Thank you so much. Feel free to continue sending those in if you'd like. How to have the money talk with your adult children, pivoting to that. So 70% of family money conversations occur only after a health crisis or other emergency. And you don't want to put this off till after an emergency happens. A lot of times there's very heightened emotions after an emergency. People aren't thinking straight. And having this conversation beforehand allows your family members to be prepared when an emergency, unfortunately, happens. So start with the basics. If you're healthy and you haven't retired, you can start by letting your kids know how much you've saved for retirement and if it's enough. And then if it's not enough, what they can do to assist in that retirement savings goal or what you're continuing to do to try to reach that goal. And then if you have long-term care insurance. If you don't have long-term care insurance, are you looking into it or have you decided that how care will be given if you can no longer care for yourself? So you might find this strange, but letting your children know that there may be an inheritance if you do have money left over to leave for them is actually important, right? So if you're able to leave your children something and cover these large expenses that adult children may face, like a house or a wedding, let them know that as well. There's no reason that an adult child should have to be stressing over these large expenses that you're actually going to cover. And then start small with this discussion, especially if you're healthy, but continue the discussion as your children get older and get finances organized sooner rather than later. So here's just a few resources. The Conversation Project has some really good resources about how to continue having conversations such as money conversations, end of life conversations, stuff like that. Really important information. Then our website, AARP ElderWatch. Again, our helpline phone number is 1-800-222-4444, option 2. We offer help for financial exploitation, scams, fraud, and then financial counseling, peer-to-peer financial counseling done by our volunteers. Your local bank or credit union may also have tips about the money talk, so don't hesitate to call them up and say, hey, what do you think the best way for me to have this conversation is? They might have things that you haven't even thought about because they work with money and kind of all the emotions that go with money every single day. And then Colorado Care Planning's website has a lot of those end-of-life documents that you can help get filled out if you don't have those yet. So I would recommend looking at all of those resources for just a little bit more information on how to get this financial stuff, done. So I'm going to switch over to questions and stop sharing my screen. If I can figure it out. Oh, you just press the button. Nice. Okay, so we do have a few questions. I'm going to look at those right now. Are there online apps you can use for budgeting? Is there one that you suggest? Yes. So I actually did a whole presentation about budgeting apps. If you are looking to help your parents manage a budget, there are apps that will give you more than one logon point. I think it's called You Honey. I want to say that is the name. I cannot remember off the top of my head. Just give me 1 second. It allows multiple people to get into the same app and then do financial management from the same platform. There are a few charges, I believe, that go with that one. Not all of them are free, but having more than one person be able to log on there and manage finances is important, I believe. So I would suggest doing one of those apps that allow more than one person to get on there. But also your typical online budgeting apps such as Mint or NerdWallet are really nice because they track all of your, spending in real time. You can connect retirement accounts, stuff like that. Okay, sorry, I did miss one question. So what if I only trust one of my 2 children with knowledge of my finances? Can I only tell one? Yes, you can only tell one. I do not want you sharing information that you're not comfortable sharing with literally anyone, even if they're your children. I would definitely recommend to tell the other child that is not being included in the financial conversation that they're not being included, that the responsibility is going to go to the other child. Try to make that blow as low as possible, just because you don't want financial drama in the future. But of course, family dynamics are really, really complicated. So you have to do what's best for your family. And if that means telling only one of your children, you definitely have to do that. I would just recommend to, tell the other child this is why your sibling is going to be managing our finances, and maybe, you have a different role for them to fill in your care. Maybe you don't, and that is A-okay as well. And then I have one more question in the chat, if I can open it back up. Yeah, so my parents are in their 90s and still won't share information. What suggestions do you have for planning in that situation? Yeah, so there are a lot of older adults that are really uncomfortable in sharing any sort of their information, even with their children. I suggest that you just try your best to get as much information as possible out of them. So rephrase, instead of saying up front, how much money do you have in the bank? Maybe try something like, I am looking to make sure that your care is adequate when, if anything happens to you as you are getting older, and I just want to make sure that I have all the information that I need. So if something were to happen, what funds would be available for your care, right? Frame it in the way of, this is in your best interest to give me this information. I'm not in it for the money. This simply has to deal with your care and what we do in your future. And in order for me to make the best decisions for you, I have to know this information. I know these conversations can be really, really difficult. So if you continue to have questions, feel free to please give us a call. We are happy to continue discussing. I'm going to try really quickly to just find that one app that I was talking about so I can actually give you it's called Honeydew. I knew it was something honey. So that's going to be Honeydew is the one that you can have multiple access points for. And they also do some education on financial management. So that is also important to have. But it's nice because you can have multiple log-on points. Everyone feels like they have their own account because they do. But you're all helping to manage your finances in the best way possible. We have 1 minute left. I thank you all so much for joining me today. I know this conversation can be difficult. I hope that these tips help. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to give ElderWatch a call. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday and a great rest of the week. And we will be back with more presentations very soon. So please feel free to log into those. Thank you.